Okay, so welcome to today's video, and in this one I will be teaching you the best tips and tricks on how you can become a pro at Gambonanza. Now, I myself have already clocked over 30 hours into this game. I have managed to beat it on every single difficulty that is available in the game, and today I'll be trying to help you out to become a pro yourself. Doesn't matter even if you do not understand even the basic concepts about this game, the basic strategies. Trust me, after this video, you will be capable of beating at least as few easier difficulties in the game. In my prediction, you will be able to easily beat at least the first three just by understanding what I'm explaining in here. Now, no prerequisites at all. However, it would be ideal if you already understood how chess pieces moves, because I'm not gonna be addressing that concept. I'm gonna hope that you do already understand how chess pieces works, and from there on I will explain the rest of the concepts on how you can easily win in this game. Okay, so we're just gonna go and jump into a random game. Because I am explaining most of the more basic stuff, I will select the easiest difficulty as well, and I will try to explain the rest of the concepts one by one. And the very first, and I would say by far the most important concept that you need to understand about this game is that in this game, especially if you're someone who has played chess before, this can be a bit difficult to overcome if you have already played, and that is you do not want to trade pieces, or in most cases even play offensively. Gambonanza is best played as a defensive game, which means that in majority of the cases, at least until the second half of the run, where you have a lot of piece generation or a lot of gambits that help you out, you really want to play on the defensive, right? So for example, in regular chess, right, if you had this piece difference, trading your pawns, so for example pushing this, the enemy would take my pawn and I would take his pawn. This is not the correct play, right? In Gambonanza you have to play defensively, which means instead of trying to trade pieces, trying to sacrifice your pieces to gain more, even if I was capturing a queen for this pawn, that is a bad trade, because the enemy pieces will regenerate. Your pieces, once you lose them forever. This means that instead of trying to capture them, you want to prey on the enemy mistakes. So in this case, I could trade here, but I'm losing a pawn. If I move here, I'm losing a pawn. The only other options I have is to move my king somewhere, or I just wait it out, right? Because I know the enemy is gonna move with both of his pawns, and once he moves, I will be able to capture with both of my pawns regardless where he moves. So in this case, we can just move the knight to any other square, and as you can see, the enemy itself will make a blunder, and because of the forced moves that he has, that is pretty much the only option you have, and this is how you should be playing majority of the game. Defensive game is gonna be way stronger than any offensive play until at least you reach stage 3, stage 4, where you have a lot of gambits and you can make use of either multiple copies of your pieces or very strong gambits that allow you to capture a lot within a single turn. And now for tip number 2, this will be another important concept which you can win without using it too much. However, it will help you out when it comes to generating additional pieces or generating a lot of extra money during a round. So this usually works best if the enemy has a lot of pawns, or at least one pawn that you can stop, but it will work with other pieces, particularly knights and bishops, if you do not. It will be a bit more difficult with rooks and queens, however it will still work. It will be just less efficient, and that is to trap an enemy piece and intentionally not capture it, to make sure that you're able to build up some extra money. So what do I mean by this, right? So let's just start a game. As you can see, I have a gold tile, which means that once a piece steps on the gold tile, at the end of the game, it will become a golden piece, and that golden piece will give you 2 extra money. Now, usually with a setup like this, right, I wouldn't exactly need too much help dealing with this comp, right? So let me see. What I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna push this here. We're gonna push this here, and we're gonna push this here. Now, what I'm doing by placing my pawn in here is, as you can see, the enemy currently doesn't have any moves. So in a regular chess game, this would be a stalemate and this would be a draw. In Gambonanza, that is not the case. In Gambonanza, having a stalemate for the enemy is actually a good thing, because any move that I do right now, the enemy is simply skipping a turn, which means I can benefit a lot from playing around. So if I had gambits that generate me money, I would be able to use of those. Currently, I only have a gold tile, however, I still can benefit from that. So yes, I could just end the game by taking this pawn, moving my rook next to this one, and then taking that one. However, what I can do is I can put my rook on a gold tile. This will already give me 2 extra gold. Next up, what I can do is capture this one. Again, I'm gonna move this here, right? I'm preparing to capture the tile. However, I also don't need to do that. Maybe I can turn another one of my pieces golden, right? So unfortunately, I cannot move here because that is dropping. So I'm gonna try to move the other way. We'll see if we can do that. The small problem with this strategy, right, is while it still works, it will stop working once you are about to either lose your piece or the enemy is about to drop. So in this case, even if I moved here, right, my pieces are not in danger. However, the enemy piece will drop and the run will end. So in this round, I was only able to get extra 2 money, but nonetheless, as you can see, if I capture, that is 2 additional dollars that you can get from a run that would have ended without any, right? So, okay, there we go. Finally, I found a shop where we have both of the tokens available. So for my third tip, it will be explaining on how you can pretty much guarantee the tile that you want in these tokens. Now, there's 2 types of tokens. There's tile token 1, which will cost 4 and it will have 2 choices, and tile token 2, which will cost 6 but will have 3 different tile choices. Now, here's the deal. If you want to 100% guarantee the tile that you get, this will be the best option for you, because landing the correct tile on this one, it will be much more difficult. So for the left one, this is where you have 2 choices. Essentially, if you want to land on the left one, you want to land on the left side of the second bubble. And if you want to ride on the right side, you want to land the token on the right side of the third bubble. So let's do that. And this will pretty much guarantee that you get a trap token or any other token that is available on the right side. Now for tile token 2, this is going to be much more difficult because there is way less space and there's a bit more RNG involved. When it comes to the left side and the right side tokens, same strategy, drop on either the left side of the second token for the left token, drop on the right side of the third one to get the right token. Middle is gonna be very difficult because most of the time wherever you land, it will land either on the first or the third tile. The middle one is very difficult to get, and from what I have experimented, you're gonna get it probably like 30, maybe 40% of the time at most. But by far the highest rate strategy that I found is dropping it on either the first bubble right corner or the fourth bubble left corner. This way, the token will move through here, and if it has the correct velocity, it will bounce from this one and drop into the middle. Now, you want to make sure that you don't have too slow velocity or too fast velocity, because if you have it too fast, it will simply skip over this, and if it is too slow, it will bounce, but it will not have enough bounce and will just drop into the right side. So let's attempt it, and yeah. This is the basic strategy that I usually use. Yeah, as you can see, this one, it unfortunately didn't have too much velocity, so it just dropped into that. But let me just showcase it one more time. Okay, perfect. Next run, I got another tile token. So yeah, let's try it again. And yeah, essentially you don't want to make it too fast, but you also don't want to make it too slow. And yeah, as you can see, if you have good velocity, it will slowly roll down, bounce on that, and you'll be able to get into the middle piece. Of course, there are different ways to get it, right? This is definitely not the only one, but from what I've experimented, this is, at least for me, the most consistent way. Definitely not 100%, but you can expect somewhere like 40 to 50%, which is why I still buy the tiles, but I try to aim for the ones in the corners because the middle one is going to be very, very difficult to get. Okay, and the next and the fourth tip that I have is how to play around turn skipping and crumble mode in order to drop some enemy pieces. Now, it will work with any round, however, it will be very, very useful if you have an elite piece on the board, because as you know, elite pieces cannot be captured until it is the last one. However, using this strategy, especially once you are towards the end of the round, you do have a very good ability to drop them early on from the tiles simply crumbling, right? So first of all, let's start the round and start capturing a few pieces. Okay, he does have the protection, so unfortunately I do have to play safe in this case. For the strategy to work, you will in most cases need to sacrifice one of your pieces, so it's best to have a ghost piece, and it is best to have the ghost piece available in your stock. However, I mean, you can have it on the board, but it will be much easier to have it available in stock because you're simply able to place it exactly where you need. So first of all, let's start by taking some enemy pieces. Let's try to target that one. Yeah, honestly, this boss is definitely not my favorite, but actually, you know what? I'll try to skip towards the end and I'll showcase how you can do that. Okay, and there we go. Look at this perfect opportunity, right? The elite piece is under a tile that is currently crumbling. Now, here's the thing. If you don't do anything, right, the AI will most likely move this piece away and it will not be able to crumble. However, there is a way for you to force it to crumble, and that is ideally using a ghost piece, but you can use any other piece that you already have available on the board if it has good placement, right? So here's the deal. You have to think about how the AI moves. AI will either move in a random tile, or if it has the ability to capture, it will capture it. So what you want to do is you want to force the enemy to capture. However, you don't want to give the ability for the enemy to capture using the piece that you want to crumble. So in this case, none of the enemy pieces can capture anything, right? This queen does not reach my queen because there is a gap in here and pieces cannot move through gaps. However, if I give either this pawn or this rook an ability to capture something, it will capture that and the queen will not move, and after her turn, the tile will drop. So there are a few options how I can do it. One of the options is going here to force the rook to capture. You cannot go here or here because first of all, this is defended, and this one, the queen can capture as well. So we want to make sure to let the enemy capture, but not put it in a place where the queen can capture. So for example, this and this wouldn't work either because it may not capture with a pawn. It will probably capture with a queen, and you will not achieve many results. However, if I let either my queen to capture here, or I give the capture chance to this pawn by placing my queen here, it will capture and the queen will drop, making the rest of the round much, much easier. As you can see, none of the pawns can currently play, and I'll be able to easily just capture the rest of the pawns to finish up the game. So yeah, that's how you can make use of the crumble mechanics. If you already have a piece that is getting threatened, in that case you don't even need to move the piece. You can simply just wait for one turn. That piece will get captured and the queen will drop as well. So yeah, keep this one in mind, especially if you want to eliminate pieces such as the elite piece or some pieces that have very annoying conditions. For example, the status one as the boss has. Okay, and for my fifth tip, it will be about various discovered attacks and some cases where it's actually better to play with a single piece on the board as opposed to having 2, 3, or even more pieces. Now keep in mind, pieces are very valuable, especially on the very first half of the game. So for example, if you don't have any like useful gambits that can multiply pieces, or if you don't have a lot of money, you want to make sure to protect every single piece. And if you look at this board, for example, right, I have 2 queens. However, from all of the options that they have to hit, there is only one hanging piece on the enemy side, and that is this knight right here, right? Because this is the only piece that is not protected by any other piece. So on paper, it actually looks free to capture, right? However, if I did capture this, the opponent has a chance to play his knight to this square right here, which would get a discovered attack from my rook onto my queen, and it will also both protect the rook from getting taken and also have an attack on my other queen, which means, here's the deal, in a situation, if 2 or more of your pieces are threatened and you're not able to take out the threat, you are pretty much guaranteed to lose a piece, and losing a piece for you is way worse than losing a single piece for the opponent. In some attacks, I would say the ratio goes even higher, and in a lot of cases, even losing like 4 or 5 pieces for the enemy for one of yours cannot be worth it in some scenarios, depending on how much stock and how many gambits you have. So you want to make sure to protect every single piece that you have. And for example, one option that you have is, instead of taking this one, try to move your queen to a safer spot where you're not in danger of a discovery check. So for example, one of the options would be, actually, now that I look at it, there's actually no other move where you wouldn't be targeted. So yeah, it would require me to have 2 moves, because unfortunately, actually no, it does look like I can go in here, which will not take this. And now, as you can see, if I take this piece, this one is of course also free, but if I take this piece, even if it gets a discovered attack while protecting the rook, the knight is not able to target my other piece in any way, and I'm safe to capture that. So yeah, one tip I want to say is that try to make sure that there are no discovered attacks that could accidentally get your pieces. And second of all, sometimes it's actually better to play with a single piece, because if I didn't have this queen at all and I only had that, I was free to capture and I could just continue decimating the backline, especially for slightly easier stages like that. And the next tip I have is about various hidden interactions with a tile. So as you know, there are currently 5 different tiles in the game. I actually seems to like I have all of them available. There is a 6th one, which is like a negative tile, but that only happens in a single boss, so I'm not going to mention that one too much. But yeah, there's 5 different tiles. You can easily read up on what they all do when you're playing the game, but there are 2 very important hidden interactions between 2 of the tiles that can help you out a lot, and it will be one of the core strategies, especially for higher difficulty levels. So first of all, probably the most important interaction will be between the phantom tile and the gondel tile. So if I get a copy of one of the pieces, and what I'm gonna do is actually I'm gonna try to prevent this pawn from moving. We're gonna capture this, and here's the deal. Ghost tiles, they have no sell value, and they will disappear after this game ends. However, if you move that tile on a golden tile, it will actually not only become a golden tile, but it will also become a permanent one. So look at this, I have 2 ghost queens, they would disappear at the end of the game. However, I move them on a golden piece, I move this one here, I move this on the golden piece, and look at this, not only are you getting gold, you're actually just got 2 permanent queens. So yeah, the ghost tiles are not only useful for various like temporary measures, but they can also not only be turned into money, but as a permanent piece as well. Okay, and the next interaction I want to talk about, this one will definitely be way less impactful, but it is still an interaction that I highly recommend you to know about, because it can be useful for some scenarios. So that interaction is a promoted piece, if it gets placed on a blessing tile, will actually become a regular piece once it is captured. So here we have a pawn right here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna promote it into a queen, right? And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move that queen onto a promoted piece, right? So first of all, let's move our regular queen here. As you can see, we don't care about this queen dropping, right? what happens is I'm gonna place my queen on a blessed tile, and the pawn is gonna be able to capture that queen instantly. And now look what piece appears in my stock. I place it here, it gets captured. Look at this. This is not a promoted queen. This is a regular queen that will stay with me permanently now, right? So yeah, that's another interaction that you should really know about, and that can help you out in some scenarios. Okay, and for my next tip, it will be mostly about ghost tiles and how you can easily bait out the opponents to move where you want. Now, for example, in this position, I really don't have any easy capture opportunities. Pretty much the only one is going here because this is a defended tile. However, if the opponent moves his rook here or here, then at that point the defense wears off. Both of my pieces are in danger and I'm most likely losing a piece. So in a way, I really don't have like any safe capture opportunities. There's of course a blessed tile, which I will get my queen back. However, it does take for me, it does take a turn to place, during which the enemy can also move as well. So what I want to do is I'm gonna show you how to bait out various opponent pieces using phantom tiles. Now, the opponent pieces that you want to bait out are usually gonna be either the highest value pieces, in this case it's the 2 rooks available here, or the pieces that have various modifiers, because those can really screw up your run. So okay, the opponent is being a little bit dumb here, but for example, my goal now is to capture this rook, right? Because it is by far the strongest piece on the board on the enemy side. However, it's going to be very difficult because even if I go for an attack here, for example, it is still protected by a king. I have to get rid of the king some way. This is very easy to do with phantom pieces if you use them as meat shield. So if I place it here, the enemy only has a single capture point that he can do, and he will be forced to capture with a rook, after which I can easily capture the rook back. So let's say you place it here. As you can see, the opponent forces himself to move into there, and it will capture. We can do it again. For example, let's say I'm having trouble capturing this one, right? Maybe it's like a powerful piece protected by something. We know the path of the bishop, and if we place it anywhere in the path, we will be able to force the bishop to move. One more thing, if you're able to, try to place it on another phantom tile, because once you place it, the enemy captures, and as you're capturing, you will be able to get a second ghost copy of the piece in the same turn, essentially saving a piece from having to capture and then only create a second piece. So in the bishop path, as we can see, we do have a ghost tile available, so we can simply place it here and not only capture, but also get another copy of our queen, right? So yeah, that's the tip of playing around with ghost pieces, as well as just essentially building up a good meat shield sort of a bait out strategy. Okay, and my next tip will be about a strategy that works, I would say, for like the first 4 difficulties. And it's by far the most OP strategy that works with a lot of different pieces, regardless of what gambit you have, and that is the protective tile strat. Now, protective tiles, when you step on a protective tile, you will get a protection for that piece for 1 turn. However, there is no requirements for that to happen. You do not have to capture a piece or anything like that. As long as you step on that tile, you will be protected. Now, this is a very, very powerful strategy for your runs, and in most cases it is best done with a queen. However, it will work just fine with a rook and a bishop as well. For pawns, unfortunately, it's not a very valuable strategy because pawns are not able to move in any direction except forward, and for knights, they can technically move back and forward. However, the moving pattern is going to be very, very difficult to execute, especially on such a small board. So yeah, by far the best way to work with the strategy is going to be with a queen. Kings work as well, you just need a bit more turns to move into the enemy backlines. But yeah, queens, bishops, and rooks will work just fine with this. And what you want to do is actually you just want to prey on walking on these pieces. Like, look at this. Even if The difficulty, of course, here is relatively easily. I can pretty much capture every piece except the spawn. However, if I, for example, didn't have any options to capture, right, what I could do is just literally just walk on this and just keep walking. If I see that I don't have a good turn, I can just keep walking on protective tiles and just wait it out. As you can see, like I don't have any capture, I can just go on protective tile, right? We have an enemy queen, let's say, right? I'm not gonna capture on purpose, but let's say we're gonna bait it out. Let's say there's a queen here, right? Like a lot of queens threatening you, and even if you capture one, they will already take with another queen. You don't have to capture. You can just go on the defensive piece, and you can keep walking until either you find some sort of an opening or until the enemy blunders. This is also a good way to sort of force the tiles to crumble, and it is a decent way. If you remember, I talked about crumbling an elite boss. This is a decent way to force the enemy to sort of start, I guess, waiting around and crumbling the pieces so that you don't actually have to fight it. You can simply just win like that. So let me take another defense piece, and I will talk about the placement options of it. So for the strategy to work, ideally I would recommend placing these early on the first 2 rows, because that is where most of the enemies will be appearing. Later game there will be some enemies appearing on the 3rd row. However, it is still a safe option to place these on the 2nd row, and most importantly, you want to place them right next to each other, because if, for example, you have a defensive tile here and a defensive tile here, but this one is not a defensive tile, the enemy might place a piece in here and you suddenly don't have a connection to your protective tiles, meaning that you cannot safely walk to each other. So you want to make sure that these are placed close to each other so that your pieces can move. If you have a queen, you can place it next to each other or diagonally. Same with a king. If you have a rook, you want to place as much of these in a direction that he can move, so right next to each other. For bishops, you want to focus on a diagonal pattern, but as long as you keep moving back and forward between these tiles, you'll see that you will easily be able to avoid most of the danger and easily not only capture but even threaten certain pieces if you feel like there is nothing that you can capture, right? So yeah, as you can see, I cannot capture any of the bishops because they are protecting each other. So what I can do is I can just threaten both of them and just hope for a blunder on one of them. And yeah, as you can see, very powerful strategy, especially if you fill the whole board with these. You will be able to bait at least the first 4 difficulties using it. And now, speaking of defensive pieces, I will tell you one concept that is very important as well. It looks like we do have a boss in here. I don't know what the boss is. Oh, the mask. Okay, this is actually a decent way to showcase the defensive tiles, I think. But yeah, what I want to say is when you're playing with defensive tiles, you want to play usually, unless there's like very important conditions or something like that, you want to play with a single piece. The problem with having multiple pieces and defensive tiles is that you can easily lose multiple pieces if you're not careful about playing with the defensive tile. So let's say I start like this, right? I'm not gonna capture on purpose. Actually, I cannot capture anyway. But yeah, let's say I am not able to capture any of these. However, I do want to threaten multiple pieces, right? I could go place my queen here on here, and it will, to you, it may seem like a defended piece, right? But there's a very high chance that you're actually losing a piece, because look what happens. Let's say I place my queen in here, right? Technically, this queen cannot be captured, right? However, if the enemy were to move his rook into here, his rook into here, any of the knights moving forward, here and here, technically, this piece, you're not losing this piece, right? But the enemy is threatening your other piece, and this piece is losing protection now. So after the enemy move, right, you will, yeah, exactly what I mentioned happened, right? This piece is no longer protected, right? You can protect it by moving on a piece. You can protect it by taking this. It's still a protective tile there. but because you're not able to protect both of your pieces, you are gonna be forced to lose one. So when you're playing with defensive pieces, try to play with a single one, because if you only have one piece, it's very, very easily to protect it. There is no danger posed to any of your other pieces, and as soon as the protection wears off, you're able to get more protection for your piece. So yeah, as you can see, unfortunately, I cannot capture it here right now. But yeah, very, very important tip when playing with a single, when playing with defensive tiles, try to play with a single tile. Now, I don't remember if I actually drop a piece if I capture. No, it looks like I don't. So yeah, that's a good way to play around it. This is especially important for later stages where you have like a lot of pieces on the board protecting each other, and it will be very, very difficult to play around if you're playing with 2 or more pieces on the board. And yeah, that's gonna be the video for the various tips and tricks from my side. As I said, I have managed to beat runs on all difficulties of these. I've been playing around with this game for well over 30 hours by now, so I've tried to explore various different strategies, various different gambits, and yeah, it's it's definitely, yeah, as you can see, I have all of the medals from various of the gambits. And yeah, I'm hoping that these tips will help you out in trying to understand the game strategies and like the main core concepts that you should play around. I know that this is by far not the only strategies that you can go for, and a lot of gambits enable a lot of various different play styles. But if you want to just make sure that you're able to, first of all, grasp the basic concepts of Gambonanza, how to safely play, how to play around with all of these tiles, all of these gambits, and all of these pieces, I'm hoping that this will help you out in sort of just starting out to understand the various strategies the opponent uses, the various strategies that you can use, and later on build upon that to conquer all of the difficulties available in the game. Because trust me, especially the 6th difficulty, the king difficulty, is no joke. Trust me, it is not a joke, and it will be very, very difficult. And if you start applying some of these strategies, you'll definitely be able to succeed in the higher difficulties moving forward. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.